Good morning, afternoon to you in the East Coast. Here for the Auto Club 400 DFS NASCAR today. Going to do a live video. Probably not going to go as long as last week, but going to get things started here. Mute my screen so I can't hear myself in the background. Okay, we have some questions. If you got some questions, you're going to come over to this YouTube screen. I'm going to share my screen here in just a minute. I'm going to kind of show you where to go to ask questions while I do the video. After the video is over, of course, you can ask questions many spots. I'll be in the DFS Tap House chat for members of RotoPros. I'll be over in the RotoPros chat, Twitter, and Daily Fantasy Sports Rankings, RotoBaller. Pretty much a ton of places you can go and hit me up if you've got questions after this video is over. So I'm just going to go here and share this video. Share my screen. Don't have to look at my ugly mug anymore. And we're going to go look at the sheet. So start things off. Qualifying was a bit of a train wreck this week. There's 13 drivers who didn't go through qualifying. They failed tech. So what you're going to see this week is a whole bunch of, like, looking at qualifying. We've got Chase Elliott, we've got Denny Hamlin, Jimmy Johnson, Eric Almirola, Clint Boyer, Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Casey Kane, AJ Allmendinger. Those are your main drivers that are starting outside the top 24 this week. So there's a lot of place differential. I think that what that's going to do is that's going to spread out the ownership quite a bit, especially when you're looking at your top guys for dominator points. So good roster construction, I think. If you're doing cash, is maybe picking two of the top, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex, Kyle Larson, or Kyle Busch, two of those guys that you think are going to dominate. My pick for dominator would be Kevin Harvick, and right now I think Martin Truex can get out front because he's starting on the pole. He showed some awesome speed there in final practice. So I think those two, stacking those two together, makes sense in cash games. And then going down into the dominators for your cash games, I usually like to throw in a punt. I don't play a lot of cash games, but my punts this week, and you can find those over on the picks tab on the sheet here. It's a little bit tougher to look on your phone, but you can definitely check that out. I'm looking at Cole Witt and Ross Chastain, and then AJ Allmendinger. I really like at 6K. I think he's a good cash game play. Just kind of want to go look at, looking at his practice times here. He was 7th in second practice, which these are both on Saturday, 29th in final practice. He didn't have a 10-lap average, so I think he's probably somewhere in that middle there. Probably a top 25, top 20 car. 15th to 20th, I think, would be his ceiling this week, which I think makes sense for cash games at 6K. And just kind of looking at how he's done here in the past, he's got a top 20 in 7 of his last 8 trips here. So I think that makes a lot of sense, using him at 6K to try and get you up to 2 of those dominator guys, and starting 30 seconds, pretty good. The other guy I'm looking at kind of in that punt range is Cole Witt. He's 5,200. I think that makes a lot of sense. Starting 37th, so he's right at the back. So he's got no negative place differential there. He practiced 32nd and 33rd, so not the greatest, but I think he does have top 30 upside. I went back and looked at some of his practice speeds from the last couple of years, and he was around that 32 to 35, fastest in the final 2 practices in those years as well. And if we go and have a look at his results here, he's raced here 4 times, and he's finished 32nd, 26th, 24th, and 18th. Starting out there, and again showing a little bit slower practice speed. So I think that makes a lot of sense using Cole Witt this week as well. So I'm just going to jump back and answer a couple questions here. Average running position to the chart. That's a good idea. Steve. I'm going to go with some woo back. Forecast. Okay, so we're just going to go, I'm going to go over to Weather Underground and look at Fontana, California. From what I heard this morning, I think we're going to be doing okay. There shouldn't be a problem. Yesterday it rained overnight. They had to dry the track. It did take a little bit of time. We had some weeping coming in, but I think today's going to be good. But we'll just have a look here. Bring that up. We'll go hourly here. Yeah, partly cloudy, not very warm. You're looking at about 55, 65 degrees. I'm in Celsius here in Canada, so just trying to adjust for that. So I think we should have no problem racing there today. To be the man, you got to beat the man. That's right, Nathan. Okay, so going back to the sheet, yeah, I talked about Cole Witt. The other guy I like this week is Ross Chastain. He started in 36th. He wasn't out there for practice 2, but practice 3, he showed 30-second speed. What I like about him is he's kind of been underrated this year. He was only about 3% owned in GPP last week. And even though he kind of looks like he's about a 32nd, 33rd place car every week just because of those practice times, he does have, just going to go over here and have a look at his, I believe he's got 3 straight top 30 finishes this year. So he's kind of overachieved. So there is a chance that he could come back down to earth this week. But at 4,900, I think he makes a lot of sense, you know, combining him. If you want to do getting into GPP formats now, if you want to do stars and scrubs, putting him and Witt together, I think it makes a lot of sense for stars and scrubs. Allows you to get 3 of those top 4 big name drivers in your lineup, which presents a lot of upside this week. Yeah, 30th, 29th, 27th. So anywhere in that range, again, would just be fantastic. Anywhere between 27 and 30. It's probably going to be in that 32, 33 range. And I think getting that 10 to 15 points is enough out of a $4,900 punt play this week. Talked about AJ Allmendinger. Going back up to the top, like I said, Kevin Harvick is my favorite. He's won 3 straight races. He's got the top, you know, sliding over here, having a look at his track history. He's got the most DraftKings point average in the last 2 years here. And if we go look at his last 6 races at California, a lot of that has to do with the 2016 race where he finished behind Jimmy Johnson. He started second. He led 142 laps. He had 50 fast laps, and he finished with 102.5 DK points that year. So that's kind of where that average comes from. Kyle Larson dominated last year. He led 110 laps, 92.5 DK points. And then just kind of sliding down at the bottom, one thing, the reason I said this week in my articles that we can go with a little bit more balanced approach. Now, this was before qualifying in my preview article, but we've only had 2 drivers, twice, lead more than 50 laps. So I'm kind of looking at that 2 dominator driver area this week. And like I've mentioned to a few of you, I believe we can have both 2 drivers that lead 50 or more laps this week, and possibly 1 that leads 75 or more, maybe even possibly 100 laps this week. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at the balanced approach there. We go back and look at a couple of questions here. Core for GPP. Well, my core right now for GPP is Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson. Speaking of Kyle Larson, he was the next driver I was going to get into. He won the race here, like I said, last year, led 110 laps. And looking at the 2-mile tracks, which includes Michigan as well, he's won 4 straight races on the 2-mile tracks. So I think it makes a lot of sense. We're going to see him run the top a lot. He likes doing that. And on this wide 2-mile track with a lot of lanes, I think we're going to see him up there a lot today. If he gets up front, you know, on restarts, he's probably going to be taking that outside lane. It worked for Joey Logano in yesterday's race. So I think Kyle Larson makes a lot of sense. He's only the 5th most expensive as well. So if you decide to maybe fade the top guys and go with the Kyle Larson, I think it makes a lot of sense to make a nice balanced lineup with Larson fading those top guys in a few lineups, you know, if you're doing the 20 max or even up into the 150, because there's so many ways you can go today. So mixing it up, you know, if you pick a core, out of my 20 lineups, I'm probably doing, you know, Larson and Harvick stacked together, Larson and Truex stacked together, and probably 15 or 16 of those lineups. And then I'll try and go maybe a little bit balanced in some of those other ones and go a little bit more contrarian against some of the guys that are going to be high chalk this week. Now, going again, some of those guys that I think are going to be nice contrarian, the 2 that I listed here, 3 actually, starting with Eric Jones. He fits right down here. He's 13th in the model. A lot of that is just his success. He hasn't had much, you know, he hasn't been here a whole lot. He's starting 4th this week. He was 12th and 21st in the final 2 practices, but he was 3rd and 6th in 10-lap average. So I think he's got that long run speed. You know, if we got some long green flag runs, I think he can run up front. He's got upside of that top 5. And I think at 8,200, fit in between Eric Almirola and Clint Boyer, who both got that big time place differential value, and then even Alex Bowman a little bit below him. Jones is going to be very low owned, so he's going to be one of those pivots that I'm going to use in GPPs this week. Okay, Harold says, I'm thinking that there will be some more wrecks here, unlike the last couple of races. So using punts or even multiple punts makes sense. Yeah, if you got that Witt, Chastain, Allmendinger, those 3 punts, you can even combine those 3 together. It's tough. You're going to leave a lot of salary on the table doing that, I find. But if those guys miss the wrecks and 3 or 4 drivers go out, that's awesome for your punt plays. They're going to gain spots just because of that. So yeah, I think I totally agree with you there, Harold. Mainly a Truex fan. Thanks for the info. No problem at all, Carl. And you mentioned Eric Jones here as well, Carl. We thought he was better off with Fernando. He did very well with Fernando. I think he's going to make his mark. I think in the number 20 car, he's got really good equipment. I think maybe possibly a little bit better equipment. And like I said, for GPPs this week, he's going to be a low owned sandwich between all these place differential plays. And I think he does have upside of a top 5 car, especially on the long runs. But Almirola and Boyer, don't get me wrong. I prefer Boyer over Almirola this week. He showed more speed. He was 10th and 7th in the final practices and 7th and 16th. So I think Boyer's got upside of a top 15, probably ceiling, top 10 car possibly this week. But I'm thinking he's more in that 12 to 15 range this week. Almirola, I just don't see him inside the top 15 this week. I kind of look at him right in between his practice times here, 15th to 18th. Which he's going to pick up some place differential points, but I think Boyer's the better play in that little group there of Almirola, Jones, and Boyer. So Boyer's going to be the chalk, followed by Almirola, but I like Jones for GPP pivot. And then I also like Ryan Blaney. He's kind of sandwiched between, you got Denny Hamlin and Jimmy Johnson right above him. He's starting 8th. He did show top 5 speed in the second practice, top 10 speed in the final practice, looking at single lap and 10 lap averages there. So I think he makes some sense. He wasn't that great here last year, but again, he's a young driver. He's going to adapt. I think he can, a top 10 is definitely in the books. Top 5 probably is his ceiling this week if things go right. And if he's going to be, 5 to 8% owned or possibly even less just with the place differential around him, I think he makes sense for GPPs there as well. Screen still black. I'm kind of watching it here just the way you guys would on the YouTube, and I'm seeing a screen here. Yeah, I'm seeing it, so I'm not sure if it's on your end. I don't see any technical difficulties. Is anyone else seeing a black screen? If you could just throw in the chat if you can see the sheet on the screen or not. Number 3 winning was cool. It was very cool. I was actually at the Daytona 500 this year. And I got to be in the pits, and I was kind of standing there when he made, after his burnout and stuff like that interview out on the track. I was right there in the pits, drove right by me. I got a nice, cool video and picture of that. And he was actually, Austin Dillon was my very first interview at Media Day, the Wednesday before the Daytona 500. So I got to ask him, about his, what it would mean to him and stuff like that to win the Daytona 500. And he actually went out and did. So it was a pretty special moment for me as well this year. And then I also interviewed Kevin Harvick. He was my second interview of the day that day. And he's won 3 straight races. So like I said, I was kind of on the podcast to kind of feel like I'm a little bit of a good luck charm to those guys. Probably not, but just kind of funny that the guys that I interviewed, I only interviewed 4 guys. Eric Jones was the other one. And then Ty Dillon as well. And I also interviewed some Chase Cabry as well down in the lower series. So it was pretty good day there, Media Day. But anyways, back to the race here. Talked about Jimmy Johnson and Denny Hamlin. They're going to be a little bit more chalky this week. Jimmy's down at 9K. He's number 4 in the model. He's been very good here. Like I said, he won the race here 2 years ago. I think he's got 5 or 6 career wins here. So he's had some success. He struggled out early on in the year, but he is starting back in 33rd. Showed top 20 speed in practice 2 and then showed top 10 speed in final practice. So I don't even think you need a top 10 from him for him to hit value at 9K. I think somewhere around top 15 would work, but he does have that upside of top 10. So I think he makes a lot of sense this week, even though he's been struggling. This is his home track. So I think I can see good things from the 48 car this week. My dad would be just joyful to hear that this week. So, oh, Carl, I wish we would have been doing videos before this. Could have met you at Daytona, but I plan on going on more races here in the future. Possibly one more this year, and then kind of getting into the next few years doing this. I'm looking at going to multiple races every year. 3-4 races would be ideal. That's kind of what my goal is, doing this and building the brand and stuff like that. It was awesome being in the pits and the garage and being able to report from there. So that's kind of where I see myself here in the future. Denny Hamlin, he started 25th, so he's the last driver outside of that second round of qualifying to start. So he's got a little bit less place differential, so I think Jimmy's going to be a little bit higher owned than him this week. But again, he showed top 15 speed in practice 2, which was Saturday, the first practice Saturday, and the second and final practice on Saturday. He was 13th, but he was also top 10 in that 10-lap average. So I think a top 10 is kind of his ceiling. That 8th to 12th spot is kind of where I see Hamlin this week. So I think he's going to be there. One guy I'm kind of off of this week, and it's just because of his final practice, is Chase Elliott. He showed top 10 speed in practice 2, which was good. But final practice, he fell outside the top 20 when we're looking at practices. He has been good here, and I think his ownership's going to be up. And I mean, you got to make a stand somewhere. You can't be using every guy unless you're doing 150 lineups and trying to fit every single driver in. So that's kind of one guy I'm making my stand on fading this week. I didn't talk about Brad Keselowski very much. If we go back and look at the last 2 races, he finished second here last year. Didn't lead any laps, so he only finished with 44 DK points. And then the year before that, he finished 9th after starting 15th. So the DK points haven't been there. I don't think he's going to be a dominator this week. And starting 11th, I'm probably looking at a top 5. Anywhere from 4th to 8th kind of for him. So he's another one that I got low exposure on. I know he ranks high in my model because he was good in that, the 10-lap averages practice. He's been good here. The form coming in is not bad. The Fords have been really good so far. So any other drivers anyone else is wondering about? Kind of scroll back through some of these questions here, make sure I got them all. Yeah, Austin Dillon in 3. We talked about him. Not really this race, but I think he's going to be another contrarian, probably in that 2 to 3% owned. Could help you if you're looking for that one filler driver just to get some lower ownership and separate your lineup. I think he makes sense. He's starting 5th. A lot of that has to do with a lot of those guys starting outside the top 24. But he was 5th fastest in 10-lap averages in final practice, and he was 9th in 10-lap averages in practice 2. So I think even getting a top 10 finish at 7,400 is good for him. And if he can get up there, maybe lead some laps, get a few fast laps, I think he's worth it, especially if he's going to be 2-3%. Newman and Menard. Yeah, I haven't talked about them yet. Newman's starting 9th. He hasn't been great here. So he's kind of one I'm staying away from. I don't think, he was 13th and 22nd in 10-lap averages. So he's kind of top 15 is kind of his ceiling for me this week, which is a negative place differential. I'd rather go down with Bowman at 7,600. He's got a ton of place differential and probably the same upside for finishing position this week. So I'm kind of leaning Bowman over Newman there. I talked about Boyer. Who's the other one? Suarez. Yeah, Suarez is another one I'll be looking at down at 7K. And he's another reason why I think Austin Dillon's going to be super low owned. But Suarez starting 30th. He did well here last year. I was just going to bring up excuse me. Suarez was 7th here last year, I believe. Yes, 7th. He started 10th. So for speed, he showed top 20 speed. He didn't really quite show that top 15 speed, but, right things happen out on the track. If there's a couple wrecks or anything like that, I think top 15 is definitely in his cards. But even, if he picks up a 16th or 17th place finish at 7,000, combining him with, let's say, an Allmendinger or one of those punt plays, I think that makes a lot of sense. You can get some points out of him this week for sure. Yeah, Newman does. He's just super consistent on a lot of these tracks. But just I really didn't want to see him start in ninth. I like him starting outside the top 10, preferably outside the top 15. He does qualify well. He's been known for that throughout his career. But just seeing those 10-lap averages, I just don't see him finishing top 10 this week. And 15th place finish, there's guys that can get more points, more raw points for right around the same price range. So won't be on him. Yeah, and Suarez to the back. In a backup car is a 37th, so that might help his ownership a little bit because he's only going to get counted from that 30th starting position. But I think he can easily make that up and still get up in that 16th, 17th, and even top 15 possibly as well. So Menard, he's been having a pretty good start to the season in that 21 car. But I'm going to be away from him starting 14th. He never did show that top 15 speed. He was 12th in final practice, 10 lap. But 6,800, if he finishes 15th, somewhere between, say, 14th and 17th, I would just rather have a Daniel Suarez or an Austin Dillon, or even just go down and pay for or save the money and go with an Allmendinger who's had some success here, or even go down into that punt range to try and get up to your – so I really want to try and fit 2 of those 4, sometimes 3 of those 4 drivers in there. So that's the way I'm looking at things this week. Any love for McMurray? Yeah, final practice he did show that top 10 speed, so I think he could be sneaky. I don't think he's going to be too high owned here. He is 5th in track history, so that's average finish over the last 2 years. But when it comes to DK points, he's back in 11th. He's not going to get a whole bunch of place differential, say for a 10th to 12th place finish. But at 7,200, again, I think he's going to be low owned for one, just because you got Daniel Suarez there. And then moving up a bit, you got Alex Bowman, Clint Boyer, and then you got, down below him, you've got William Byron, Casey Kane, AJ Allmendinger. You got those place differential plays. So he could definitely be sneaky and someone I would could definitely consider in GPP lineup if you're constructing multiple lineups. Magnify the screen. Let's go do that. Sorry about that. I didn't even think about that when doing it. I had it just smaller just so I could view more stuff on the screen at once. But for this video, that does make a lot of sense. Let me know if that's any better, and that's something I will do moving forward. Yeah, I can see already that it makes it looks a lot better doing it that way. So that's something I will definitely do in the future. Thanks for all the suggestions for sure. Cole Witt, yeah, I talked about him a little bit. Just going to scroll down here. Starting 37th. Like I said, I think I'll go back here and I'll just bring up his track history here one more time. And for that, I like to use driver averages. It's one of the sites that I draw a lot of my information in from. 4 years he's raced here, 32nd, 26th, 24th, and 18th. So he does have a top 20. I don't think he's got that top 20 speed this week, but for punt pricing, starting 37th with no negative place differential, like I said, I think he's going to be a good punt play. Even if he finishes in that 32nd, 33rd range, I think that's enough points for 5,200. And he does have that top 30 upside. He's shown that in the past, even though he doesn't show in the practice. Like I said, I went back and checked his practice speeds from final practices the last couple of years, and they look very similar to this year. And he's finished top 33 times out of 4. Strategies if you're using less than 10 lineups. Yes, I think you need to hit on those dominators. Like I said, I think there's going to be 2 guys that lead 50 or more laps this week, so I'm kind of looking for multiple dominators. I think one of them can maybe lead 75 plus, and kind of my pick for that is Kevin Harvick. He was fastest in second practice, 4th in final practice, and then he was the fastest 10-lap average in both practices on Saturday as well. So I think Truex is probably going to get out front early from qualifying. We're going to see him get out. As you see, he was top 3 in the final 2 or in final practice when looking at single and 10-lap averages. So I think he's going to get out and lead some laps until there's either a caution or he could lead the whole first stage. It's definitely a possibility. I think Kyle Larson's going to give him a run there in the early stages of the race. But I think Harvick's got the long run car where he can get out and he can lead 50 to 70 laps. He didn't quite do that last week. Had some troubles getting the car tuned in there last week, so he didn't lead as many laps as we'd like. Larson got out front early. and led those laps. I think that's something Truex is going to do this week. And then Harvick's going to take over from there. And then I think coming down, when it comes to the win, I think it's going to be real close. I think we're going to see probably Harvick, Truex, Kyle Busch, and Larson. I think you're going to see those 4 drivers, barring any crashes or anything. Those are the 4 drivers that I'm thinking are going to be inside the top 5. And then that outside guy, like I told, someone asked for my top 5 drivers this week, regardless of price or whatever. Eric Jones was in there, and I really think Eric Jones can get a top 5. So if you can fit Eric Jones in there, but step back to strategy, I think picking 2 of those 4 drivers. So for me, if I was doing just 10 lineups, probably in 7 or 8 of those lineups, I'd probably go Harvick and Truex together, personally, unless you feel Larson is going to get ahead of Truex early. So it's Harvick and then either Truex or Larson for me in those 7 to 8 lineups. And then talking GPP, obviously, so then I would probably go down and get a piece of Allmendinger, Cole Witt, or Chastain. And I kind of rank them. I think I like Cole Witt a little bit better than Chastain this week. I do like AJ Allmendinger as well. Like I said, he's done top 20 in 7 of his last 8 races here. So, he's had some success on this track. So I think those 2 of those 3, I think you want to fit in. And then from there, if you fit 2 of those top guys, 2 of these punt plays in there, you can kind of go any direction from there, and you can kind of mix and match to separate yourself. Like I said, you can go with like an Austin Dillon for low ownership. I've got a lot of Clint Boyer this week, starting 26, and he showed top 10 speed. Eric Jones, I think, is going to be low owned. Ryan Blaney, low owned. I think you can fit in Jimmy Johnson at 9,000, Denny Hamlin. You can kind of mix and match and separate yourself there. And the biggest thing, you don't have to concentrate it on so much this week as weeks pass, when there isn't as many place differential plays to separate yourself. When ownership, when there's a chalky guy, it's going to be 60 to 70% owned, or 2 guys that are going to be 50% owned plus this week. But if you do want to separate yourself even more, leaving 500 plus, and I did this so far, I've made, I think, 16 lineups before I started the video. And in about 5 of them, I left 600 or 500 or more dollars on the table. And I think 2 of them I left 900 to 1,200 on the table, just to be, separate, just because there is so many options, so many ways you can go this week. So just trying to be a little bit different and contrarian there. So even if you have a lineup with 4 or 5 guys that are going to be chalky, leaving that money on the table is a good way to separate yourself. Okay, that's pretty much, top 3 in cash. Okay, so for cash, I think you're going to need those dominators. So Kevin Harvick would be number 1. And then just because of the price, I'm going to go down to Kyle Larson for cash. And then AJ Allmendinger at 6,000, just because he's been successful here. He's starting 32nd. Even if he's top 25, I think it makes sense for 6K to go back to him. But like I said, he's finished top 20 here in 7 of his last 8 races. So that's something I'm looking at for sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. Going to be back next week, probably start doing a little bit longer. Like I said, thank you for all the suggestions. And again, if you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at Jaeger_bomb. This is kind of what my Twitter handle looks like, because we've got about, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we've got about 2 hours left, hour and a half for sure, before lock. If you're a RotoPros member, head over to the chat. You can private message me, go into the members only chat there. Hit me up with any questions. I'll be there. DFS Tap House, I'll be there as well. Answer any questions if anyone has any questions about my sheets or suggestions. DFSR members, jump into the chat room here as well. Rotoballer, I don't have it up here, but there's a chat room at the bottom of my article as well. You can also leave comments in this video. You can always rewatch it. I think it stays up after this, so if you want to go back and check out any part of the video, you can definitely do that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for checking out all my content. And again, for all your suggestions, I'm going to try and make this better every week. This is only the 2nd time doing this. I see that my face still doesn't show up on the screen, which is probably good anyway. But good luck this week, and let's see some green screens, everyone.